Engineers make clear droplets produce iridescent colors. By tuning size, enlightenment point, and curve, MIT architects can create splendid shadings, in designs they can anticipate, in any case straightforward drops. Engineers at MIT and Penn State University have tracked down that under the right conditions, standard clear water drops on a straightforward surface can create splendid tones, without the expansion of inks or colors. This brilliant impact is because of primary tone, by which an item produces tone essentially because of the manner in which light cooperates with its mathematical construction. The impact may clarify certain brilliant marvels, like the beautiful build-up on a plastic dish or inside a water bottle. Designers at MIT and Penn State University have tracked down that under the right conditions, standard clear water drops on a straightforward surface can create splendid shadings, without the expansion of inks or colors. The scientists have fostered a model that predicts the shading a bead will create, given explicit primary and optical conditions. The model could be utilized as a plan manual for produce, for instance, bead-based litmus tests, or shading-changing powders and inks in cosmetics items. Manufactured colors utilized in purchaser items to make brilliant shadings probably won't be pretty much as sound as they ought to be, says Matthias Koller, collaborator educator of mechanical designing at MIT. As a portion of these colors are all the more unequivocally managed, organizations are asking, would we be able to utilize primary tones to supplant conceivably unfortunate colors? On account of the cautious perceptions by Amy Goodling and Lauren Zarzar at Penn State and Tessera's displaying, which brought this impact and its actual clarification to light, there may be an answer. Sarah Nagelberg of MIT, alongside lead creator Goodling, Zarzar, and others from Penn State, are Koller's co-creators on the paper. Architects make clear droplets produce colors. Seen from a higher place, straightforward drops in a petri dish, enlightened with white light, show up as shifting tones, contingent upon their size and shape. Graciousness of the specialists. Follow the rainbow. Last year, Zarzar and Goodling were considering straightforward bead emulsions produced using a combination of oils of various thickness. They were noticing the drops communications in a reasonable petri dish, when they saw the drops showed up shockingly blue. They snapped a picture and sent it off to Koller with an inquiry, why is there shading here? At first, Koller figured the shading may be because of the impact that causes rainbows, wherein daylight is diverted by downpour drops and individual tones are isolated into various bearings. In physical science, dispersing hypothesis is utilized to portray the way circles, for example, raindrops dissipate a plane of electromagnetic waves, like approaching daylight. However, the beads that Zarzar and Goodling noticed were not circles, but instead, sides of the equator or arches on a level surface. At first we followed this rainbow-causing impact, says Nagelberg, who headed up the displaying exertion to attempt to clarify the impact. Be that as it may, it ended up being something very extraordinary. She noticed that the group's hemispherical drops broke balance, which means they were not wonderful circles, an apparently clear truth yet by a significant one, as it implied that light ought to act distinctively in sides of the equator versus circles. In particular, the inward surface of a side of the equator permits an optical impact that is preposterous in wonderful circles, absolute inside reflection, or tear. Absolute inside reflection is a marvel wherein light strikes an interface between a high refractive record medium, water, for example, to a lower refractive list medium, like air, at a high point to such an extent that 100% of that light is reflected. This is the impact that permits optical strands to convey light for kilometers with low misfortune. At the point when light enters a solitary drop, it is reflected by tear along its inward interface. Truth be told, when light advances into a drop, Nagelberg found that it can take various ways, skipping 2, 3, or more occasions prior to leaving at another point. The manner in which light beams accumulate as they exit decides if a drop will deliver shading or not. For instance, two beams of white light, containing all apparent frequencies of light, entering at a similar point and leaving at a similar point, could take completely various ways inside a drop. In the event that one beam ricochets multiple times, it's anything but a more drawn-out way than a beam that skips twice, so it lingers behind marginally prior to leaving the bead. On the off chance that this stage slack out comes in the two beams' waves being in stage, which means the waves' box and peaks are adjusted, the shading relating to that frequency will be apparent. This obstruction impact, which at last creates shading in any case clear beads, is a lot more grounded in little instead of huge drops. When there is obstruction, it resembles kids causing a ripple effect in a pool, Koller says. In the event that they do anything they desire, there's no helpful accumulating of exertion, and simply a ton of wreck in the pool or irregular wave designs. Be that as it may, in the event that they all push and arrange, you get a major wave. It's the equivalent here. If you get waves in eliminate coming, you get greater power of shading. A floor covering of shading. The shading that beads produce additionally relies upon underlying conditions, like the size and bend of the drops, alongside the drop's refractive records. Nagelberg consolidated this load of boundaries into a numerical model to anticipate the tones that beads would deliver under certain underlying and optical conditions. Zaza and Goodling then, at that point, tried the model's expectations against real drops they delivered in the lab. To start with, the group streamlined their underlying examination, making drop emulsions, the extents of which they could unequivocally control utilizing a microfluidic gadget. They delivered, as Koller portrays, a cover of drops of precisely the same size, in an unmistakable Petri dish, which they enlightened with a solitary, fixed white light. They then, at that point, recorded the drops with a camera that circumnavigated around the dish, and saw that the beads displayed splendid tones that moved as the camera orbited around. This showed how the point at which light apparently enters the drop influences the drop's tone. The group likewise created beads of different sizes on a solitary movie and saw that from a solitary survey heading, the shading would move redder as the drop size expanded, and afterward would circle back to blue and push through once more. This bodes well as indicated by the model, as bigger drops would give light more space to ricochet, making longer waves and bigger stage slacks. To show the significance of bend in a bead's tone, the group delivered water buildup on a straightforward film that was treated with a hydrophobic, water-repulsing arrangement, with the drops framing the state of an elephant. The hydrophobic parts made more sunken drops, while the remainder of the film made shallower drops. Light could all the more effectively skip around in the curved drops, contrasted with the shallow drops. The outcome was a brilliant elephant design against a dark foundation. Notwithstanding fluid drops, the scientists 3D printed small, strong covers and vaults from different straightforward, polymer-based materials, and noticed a comparative vivid impact in these strong particles that could be anticipated by the group's model. Koller expects that the model might be utilized to plan beads and particles for a variety of shading evolving applications. There's an intricate boundary space you can play with, Koller says. You can tailor a bead's size, morphology, and perception conditions to make the shading you need. This examination was upheld, partially, by the National Science Foundation and the U.S. Armed Force Research Office through the Institute for Soldier Nanotechnologies at MIT.